Hello and welcome to York Universe, the astronomy and astrophysics radio podcast written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. You'll find us now wherever podcasts are distributed. I'll be one of your hosts this evening. I'm Dr. Elena Hyde, and I'm joined tonight by our fabulous Sana Withers, broadcasting live from the Allan Carswell Observatory, located at York University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. As a reminder, York Universe broadcasts live every Monday night at 9 p.m. local Toronto time, or Tuesday morning at 2 a.m. UT, if that's more your speed. We broadcast live on YouTube in concert with our online public viewing program run by the Observatory team. That's York U Observatory over on YouTube. And of course, as a podcast, we go out wherever podcasts are to be found. So that's Spotify and Apple and all the rest. To navigate to the live show or to find out more, check out our website at yorku.ca/science/observatory. You can follow the links to OPV for online public viewing, join the live chat on YouTube, or come visit us in person if you'd like to join one of our weekly Wednesday in-person tours. If you have any questions or comments about past shows, suggestions for future topics, you can always email us at observe@yorku.ca. And you can also find us over on social media. We're on Instagram with the handle YorkU Observatory, PixelFed at Allan Carswell Observatory, and Facebook at Allan Carswell Obs, just to be a little different. So if you'd like to make a donation, you can also see that same website, yorku.ca/science/observatory. All of our programs are free and largely volunteer run, so all donations are appreciated. We are, of course, monitoring the chat room for questions, and it is looking like it might actually be a little bit clearer tonight. So, Sana, how is the weather where you are?
The sky was looking pretty good not long ago. There are a couple of thin clouds, so hopefully nothing that will prevent us from opening. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. And as a reminder, Sana is actually at the 1 meter telescope right now in person. If you want to see what the skies look like right now above the observatory, we actually do have an all sky camera hooked up that is viewable to anybody who'd like to see. That's on our same website that I gave during the introduction. It's yorku.ca/science/observatory. You just click on observers, and there's a little thumbnail that shows a sky view with the two domes. That's our all sky camera that's on the roof. And if I click on it right now, it tells me 13 July 9:01 p.m. And of course it shows very, very clear skies with a little bit of clouds hanging around the edge, and of course a bit of sun still up because it's summer.
Yeah, these late sunsets are something else.
Yeah, well, we're almost past it, so just a few more months and we'll go back to having the sunset at a more reasonable hour. But we can't open just yet, but of course after this show, we are expecting all kinds of great stuff up in the sky, and while the broadcast is going on, if you're live on YouTube, make sure to tune in because they are going to try to connect the views from the 1 meter telescope inside the dome directly to online public viewing. And that's always a great time.
Yeah.
And of course, clear skies in Toronto, that's always something to celebrate.
Yeah, the past few days have been pretty good for clear skies, but of course that has to also fall with the heat wave.
Yes, and every time we get a big jump in or fluctuation, we get another one of those rainstorms coming through. But we can, fingers and toes crossed, the clear skies stay. Maybe with a little bit less heat would be nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely like it to drop 10 degrees. That would be ideal.
Yeah, I think it could probably go down about 25 degrees.
I mean, that's my ideal. That would make me very happy, but I would settle for a 10-degree drop in temperature.
Yeah. We just need to go up in altitude, actually. That would solve so many problems. And speaking of going up in altitude, this is going to get us to our little bit of this week in space and astronomy history. So we are going to go back in history a little bit this episode. We have some really fun news items, so I might try to definitely get there. But yeah, if you go up in altitude high enough, you get to leave Earth's atmosphere. And Sana, that's just what your first item did.
Yeah. So this is July 12th, 2022. So 4 years ago yesterday is the anniversary or the birthday of the James Webb Space Telescope, because that was when it released its very first set of science images to the public and to the scientific community. So JWST is a 6.5 meter infrared telescope. It has a massive golden mirror, and fun fact, the domes at the observatory are about 6.5 meters in diameter, if I'm not mistaken. So
Correct.
the mirror of the James Webb Space Telescope, if you've ever been up in the observatory domes, is as big as the observatory domes themselves, which is kind of a fun thing to see for scale. And the reason everybody loves James Webb is because it is the most powerful and the largest space telescope that has ever been created. So before it was launched, it was kind of promised to revolutionize astronomy and change our understanding of so many things. This is ranging from galaxy evolution to the evolution of the early universe, even things to within our solar system, like observing different asteroids and planets within our solar system. And I can tell you now, 4 years later, it has definitely followed through with that. And it has really changed a whole lot of stuff and given us a new perspective on a variety of different things in astronomy. So this is a pretty exciting fourth birthday to James Webb. Now, I guess Webb, you could also say, has two birthdays because its launch date was December 25th, 2020. And then the actual first images came 6 months later after 6 months of deploying the telescope. The telescope itself is so massive, it couldn't actually be launched in its science configuration. So there was a few weeks of basically just unfurling this telescope and unfolding it and getting it ready and looking like a telescope ready to actually operate. It also took a while to travel 1.5 million kilometers away from the Earth to something called the Lagrange 2-point, which is where it lives and collects all of its science observations. So between that and also some commissioning work, basically aligning the mirrors, understanding how the instruments actually operate once they're in space and collecting real data. It took about 6 months to basically get the telescope from launch to full science operation, which led up to the July 12th, 2022 image release, which I guess maybe is its second birthday, because it kind of does have two. But the first images released themselves was super, super exciting. The very first image from James Webb to be released was of a massive galaxy cluster called SMACS 0723. This was actually released the day before the official image release with all of the other data sets that came out. But SMACS 0723 is this massive galaxy cluster that lies about 4.2 billion years in the past. So not only were we able to get kind of a really in-depth look at the galaxy cluster itself, but it also has some very interesting things lying behind the galaxy cluster. So basically what can happen is you get these really, really faint galaxies from the early universe that are in just the right position behind the galaxy cluster so that they experience gravitational lensing. And in this case, the cluster is basically acting as this massive magnifying glass and magnifying the light from these really faint galaxies so that we can actually see them, even though we wouldn't be able to without the gravitational lens. So this image was really exciting because it was one of the deepest infrared images of the night sky at the time, and it revealed thousands of new galaxies, including some of the most distant galaxies known in the universe at the time. A couple of the other images that were released was a picture of the Southern Ring Nebula, which is the death of a sun-like star. When stars like our sun die, they kind of like puff off their outer layers into space and then leave behind a white dwarf star in the center. So there was a really detailed images of the Southern Ring Nebula. There was also, speaking of stages of star formation, the beginning stages of star formation from the Carina Nebula. And this was a really interesting, this is a really great picture, actually, because this is also a pretty famous Hubble Space Telescope image. So we get also a nice view of the Carina Nebula, which is a star-forming region with James Webb. There were also a spectrum of a planet called WASP 96b, which gave us the most detailed view of an exoplanet atmosphere ever at the time. And kind of the point of all the different images and data sets that were released with sort of the first images release of James Webb were kind of just designed to cover all of the bases of all the different kinds of science that James Webb was going to do, to just release them out to the astronomical community right away so people could start working with the data, and also just to get some really, really cool, pretty pictures for everybody else, including astronomers, to kind of just sit and admire. So definitely a really exciting history item, especially for me because I love James Webb. It's an awesome telescope. And I should also mention that NASA, ESA, and the CSA every single year for the anniversary of the first image release do release a new image from the James Webb Space Telescope. This year, it's an image of a galaxy called Centaurus A. This is a relatively nearby galaxy to the Earth. It is a radio source, which means it has a supermassive black hole at the center, which is currently feeding on its surroundings and becoming very bright in the process, and is also one of the closest starburst galaxies to the Milky Way. So for a couple of different reasons, just because it's so close to us and it's kind of unique, it's been studied a lot by astronomers. And it also is just a really pretty galaxy. So if you could check out Centaurus A from JWST, it's definitely a fun thing to do. NASA even has a little map, interactive map of Centaurus A, where you can click around, and they've highlighted a few of the interesting and unique features in Centaurus A visible with James Webb.
Yeah, such a cool mission. The JWST is still giving us so many wonderful things.
Yeah.
And I will just say one thing to maybe point out to our listeners is that although Centaurus A is a nearby galaxy, it is still a different galaxy outside of the Milky Way, which means it's actually ridiculously far away. Yeah. So whenever astronomers say something's close, you have to watch out. Because it's like close, but if we think about our solar system with our little planet Earth and our sun, and being 4 light years away from the nearby Proxima Centauri, approximately.
Yeah.
That's 4 light years. We're now talking about 11 million light years.
Yeah.
So our entire Milky Way is only about 100,000 light years side to side, as the Monty Python song says. But this is then 11 million light years away. So close enough that we can, with some telescopes, see a little bit, but far enough away that a lot of ground-based telescopes in particular have trouble getting detail on this galaxy. And that's something that so many JWST images have done, especially being in infrared rather than optical light. We're getting a lot of extra detail about the gas and dust structure, and in this case, the heart of that galaxy. It's just so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and on the other side of when astronomers say distant galaxies, they're often referring to like billions and billions of light years away, which is that JWST is really good at doing.
Yeah, well, that was one of your first objects, right? The 0723 is what did you say? 4.2 billion. It's so far, and yet we're getting real images from it. So
yeah,
great stuff. And it's awesome. And it's just, there's so much to enjoy, and it's something that whenever we talk about the history of JWST, we have to say, and it's still going. It's still doing so many cool things. It's still in the news all the time. Like every time I turn on astronomy news, there's something about JWST exoplanets, or JWST black holes, or JWST something else.
Yeah.
So, in the news right now, if you go to, well, an astronomy news site that's not AI generated, um, you'll find all kinds of great stuff. So yes, and I will say as well, like what you're talking about is like the anniversary for JWST. There's so many cool side by sides that have been done, of like what ground-based telescopes have seen versus JWST, or like the Hubble Deep Field, one of the biggest, most famous images of our time, versus JWST Deep Field.
Mhm. Yeah, it's the Carina Nebula specifically is probably
Yeah,
my favorites of the first images, because like it was a really famous picture from the Hubble Space Telescope just on its own. It was a gorgeous picture out of Hubble. Tons of amazing science came out of it. And then you look at it through James Webb and it's like, oh my God. There's just
yeah.
so much more structure, so much more detail. You can see a whole lot of fainter stars in the background that you can't see with Hubble. So like even just compared to like the previous like state of the art instruments that people had been using, like James Webb still really got you that extra distance. Quite literally in some cases with distant galaxies.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's because it's looking at a different part of the wavelength range, then it's showing us things that, other telescopes weren't able to show us. So great stuff all around.
Yeah.
Now, I should probably keep going with our history. So I'm going to go a little bit farther back into 1980, or very, very far back, depending on how old you are, I guess. So I also wanted to cover kind of a historical launch, but in the 18th of July, so a few days from now, all the way back in 1980, ye olden times to you young folks, there was a really historic launch that happened from India. And this was the first successful Indian orbital launch. The Rohini RS-1B, or Rohini Satellite 1, or sometimes called RS-1 because people like giving lots of names to things. This was the first satellite launched successfully by India. And this is an amazing thing that happened in 1980, this week. And this was a big game changer because, of course, recently we've seen all kinds of major successes from the Indian Space Agency, but this was kind of the beginning. They had some rockets that they developed themselves, and this was their first satellite launched by their own rockets. The launch was on the 18th of July, 1980, and this was an SLV rocket. And this basically made India the 7th country to have rocket launching capability. So the satellite itself was not the biggest, maybe not the biggest, not the most complex, but it was a pretty interesting one. So it was about 35 kilograms, so not super small. It had a lot of instruments and a lot of science, which is what we love to hear. It had a digital sun sensor, which was basically a navigational instrument. So this would allow their spacecraft to detect the position of the sun and control its attitude and its solar array pointing and update its little gyro that helps it move. It had a magnetometer, temperature sensors, and it had a structure made of aluminum alloy, so a lighter weight structure. It did have, of course, solar panels because, sun sensor. And it produced about 16 watts of electricity, and it used a very high frequency band of radio communication to talk back to Earth. It had a mission life of 1.2 years, so a little over a year, but it was only planned to have a lifespan of 100 days. So it actually did really, really well. It remained in orbit for 20 months. It went far beyond its little lifespan, and it was the first one. So like many great firsts, obviously the JWST might be bigger and more expensive, but this one was the start of something that has continued to absolutely amaze in, everything from lunar astronomy to space exploration. And the Indian Space ISROs, the Indian Space Organization, is a national space agency of India, and this one is still going very, very strong. So a little bit of fun: the satellite launch vehicle. This was an early project that had started back in the 70s, and of course they launched in 1980. But it was a much smaller, sort of less expensive launch vehicle than what we've seen from things like NASA, and especially what we've seen recently with, of course, the Artemis missions, where they have to carry heavy humans into space.
Is the ISRO part of the Artemis missions?
That's a good question. Are they members of Artemis? I believe they were involved somehow. They do have a human spaceflight program, and there are a list of astronauts that they maintain. Now, are they going up in Artemis? I don't know. I know they were part of the Axiom mission, and that was a private crewed spacecraft that went to the International Space Station. But I'm not sure about their Artemis. I'm not sure about their Artemis participation.
I just looked it up, and they are actually. There's a NASA press release about India signing the Artemis Accords.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. They're doing a ton of stuff. They've got Moon and Mars exploration missions, and of course the Chandrayaan 2 and 3, 1, 2, and 3 around the moon, which was triple threat, if you will. So they've done some really, really great stuff, and of course, their first success is really kind of cool, because that was all the way back in 1980, or as recent as 1980, depending on how you want to phrase it. But what they've done with relatively lower budget and a lot less resources has been really, really impressive. Their first satellite they built, the first official launch, and their launching facility as well. They've done quite a bit, and I'm not at all surprised that they're part of Artemis. And a little bit about, because they have their own launch center as well, they're not dependent on sort of moving their equipment to other launch facilities like some other places.
Yeah, like Canada's. I don't think Canada has a launch facility. I think it's trying, but so far.
Yeah, I don't think our location is particularly good.
Yeah.
But hope springs eternal.
Yeah.
But yeah, the launch center that this craft was launched from. So this Rohini Satellite 1, or RS-1, it was launched from the Satish Dhawan Space Center. And that's the same one that has the launch pads that launched Chandrayaan 1, 2, and 3 for the lunar exploration. It launched the Mars orbiter mission known as MOM. Which is, I was like, okay, that's pretty cute. I don't know if they did that on purpose, but somebody got an entire mission named after their mom. So
there is actually a JWST program called MOM.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's not the only one.
Yeah, so it's there's some galaxies named like MOM Z14 because the program name is something like Mirage or Miracle, so they abbreviate it to MOM.
Wow, that's pretty good. Yeah, it's so the Indian Space Agency MOM was around Mars. And that was back in 2013, so a little bit more recent than 1980. And it was also a great success. So I believe it lasted for seven years, or more.
So they also have a history of sort of, what is it, under promising and over delivering.
Yeah, well, space launches and space missions are really, really hard. So, I mean, if you don't over engineer, your failure rate's just going to be so high because when it fails, you lose everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of it is partially that, but also, they do have very, very high build quality on their missions, at least the ones I've seen. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what launches next from the Satish Dhawan Space Center. So if you're ever in, let's see, if you're ever in an island in the Tirupati district of Andhra Pradesh, India, I guess send us a picture because it sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, great stuff. So this was my history for today. A wonderful mission, Rohini Satellite 1 or RS-1, first successfully launched by India in the 1980s, July 18th, making India the 7th country with rocket launching capability and doing some really, really cool science. So hats off to Rohini and everyone over at the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO.
Yeah. And the 1 meter is on Venus now.
Oh, all right. Well, if people are watching live, which I encourage folks to do over on YouTube, the live view of Venus gets to see a lovely phase, which is always nice. The phases of Venus. Fun to track, hard to get them all. Excellent. Well, maybe we should just take a small break and do some reminders to folks while we're letting people watch Venus over on YouTube.
Yep.
I'll go ahead and start off with some reminders. First of all, I guess for a reminder, 13th July 2026, everyone, Venus is out. So if you're watching right now, if you're looking in the sky, you too could go see the planet Venus. It's very, very bright, usually visible even through city lights. If you are pointed the right direction and do not have a large building blocking your way, I would have to say. There's always a caveat in Toronto. But of course, it's in the west, so you'll have to catch it fast.
It's always a nice thing to see just around sunset because it's so bright. Like it's the brightest thing in that part of the sky. So I don't know. I've always liked seeing Venus around sunset when it's up.
Oh yeah, it's extra. I don't know. It's something about it just being that big, bright, not an airplane mystery. Yeah. Although we will be talking about other bright things later that are not going to be so good, but I won't spoil it just yet.
Yeah.
So in the news, I will say, other than Venus, which is newsworthy in and of itself, we do have some Allan I. Carswell Observatory special news. First of all, Astrofair is returning. Hooray! Hold your applause, everyone. It's August 29th, 2026. So in almost 1 month, a little over 1 month, Astrofair will be coming back to the Allan I. Carswell Observatory. That means that we will be hosting numerous activities and giveaways and games and observing and telescopes. There will be a neutrino display, and if you thought you couldn't see neutrinos, you'd be right and wrong, so come by and find out how. The Astrofair is our only major fundraiser of the year. It supports all of our outreach and of course our free tours that happen every week. So grab a ticket, support a good cause, and come on by and see all the cool stuff. Lots and lots of great stuff. So it's all on our website, yorkie.ca/science/observatory. And then you can just click on Astrofair. Any of the Astrofair links will take you to the page with the tickets. And this one does require tickets. It's our only paid event of the year. So all the other stuff is free. But come to this one because it's our fundraiser. And also it's going to be really, really fun. This year we'll be welcoming a few new people, as well as I believe Soric Screen is coming this year. So if you haven't heard of them, they'll be doing a lightbox display. And of course, we're getting the planetariums from Astronomy in Action coming back to York campus. All that for only $30, which is less than the price of a movie and popcorn. So Astrofair is coming back, and speaking of the free stuff, free is still happening every week here at the Allan Carswell Observatory. Thanks to our hearty volunteers, we are able to continue with all kinds of great free things, including our tours. So upcoming this week, on the 15th of July, we're going to try for a pop-up observing event, which is where we take some small telescopes out into the campus. So if you go ahead and get tickets for that, they are free tickets. They just let us know that you're coming. They'll also ensure that you get an email update in case of any weather cancellation, because if we take the telescopes outside, it does have to be clear for pop-up observing. So if it's cloudy, we might reschedule in the domes, or we may have to cancel. So please get the tickets on the website. It's totally free and lots of fun. The other really cool free thing that we have running right now is our Astronomer in Residence program. That's right, more free stuff from the observatory for all of you. The Astronomer in Residence program runs every summer with the Allan A. Carswell Observatory and Killarney Park. It is active right now, which means astronomers are in the process of going up to Killarney Provincial Park, presenting astronomy in the parks, and writing a really cool blog while they're up there. So if you'd like to read the blog and follow along, it's again the same exact website, it's all free. Just click on the Astronomer in Residence or AIR, and then Astronomer in Residence blog will show you who's been up most recently or who's going next. So the next person hasn't been put in yet, but actually one person who was just there is my co-host, Sana Withers. So Sana, you just finished your Astronomer in Residence blog. How was it up there?
It was a lot of fun. The skies up there are absolutely beautiful, so it's always so nice to be able to go out there and actually get like nice dark skies as opposed to what we have in Toronto. Not to mention the Killarney Provincial Park is a beautiful park. There's so many activities and fun things to do there. So if you are planning a camping trip, I can definitely vouch for Killarney. That would be a lot of fun.
Oh yes, and if you are planning a camping trip and want to make sure to get observing, you'll need to check the schedule for the Astronomer in Residence, because we're not there every week. We're only there for a select set of weeks, and so our next astronomer is actually starting today, Ryan Marciniak. So his blog will be appearing starting tomorrow.
Yeah, but it's definitely a lot of fun. I always enjoy, Anna and I always enjoy the air trips and being able to get some observing in.
Yeah, of course, a Bordeaux class dark sky preserve is a very different environment from downtown Toronto. But we can still do pretty good with our 1 meter telescope, which is of course what is showing live over at the Observatory online public viewing.
I believe they're on Arcturus now.
Yes, the red color is a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
If you're trying to spot Arcturus, the shiny red star that you can arc to from the Big Dipper is always a good way to go. So lots of fun reminders this week, lots of great free stuff, and of course, Astrofair tickets. Tell your friends, tell your family, bring them all by. It should be a great time, and let's get into a little bit of astronomy news. There's so much news happening right now. I feel like we're not going to have time to figure it all out, but we should be able to cover at least some of the highlights. And man, talking about black holes earlier, this is, there's been some really cool stuff happening. Do you want to do yours first, Sana?
Yeah, sure. So this is about some really cool stuff that's come out of the Euclid Space Telescope. So Euclid and James Webb they're very different kinds of space telescopes, but they work together pretty well. So James Webb is this massive 6.5 meter diameter mirror that looks at a small patch of the sky with really deep imaging. And Euclid is almost kind of the opposite. It has a very wide field telescope. So it can look at large patches of the sky at any given time. And it's actually such a wide field telescope that it's going to do like surveys of very large patches of the sky. So I'm not sure what the timeline is here exactly, but in the sort of planned mission lifetime at the moment, Euclid is going to survey a third of the entire night sky to really get a census of some rare, bright objects that exist all throughout the universe. In particular, galaxies in the very early universe. And this is about some really cool things that Euclid has discovered in the early universe, particularly new types of quasars. Now, quasars are basically just supermassive black holes that can weigh things like billions to potentially even trillions of times the mass of the sun. And when you throw one of these black holes at the center of a galaxy and surround it with a whole bunch of stuff like stars and gas, all of this stuff can start to kind of fall into the black hole. It'll form what's called an accretion disk around the black hole, where this matter is sort of swirling around the black hole as it falls into it. And during this process of in the accretion disk and falling into the black hole, matter heats up a lot and gets super, super bright. So quasars, that's eventually what produces a quasar, which is just kind of the brightest things that exist in our universe. These supermassive black holes and the associated quasars often get much brighter than the actual galaxies themselves. So they are kind of prime candidates for telescopes like Euclid because they are, I think, somewhat rare, especially in the early universe. So telescopes like Euclid can basically pick out large numbers of these quasars in the early universe, which is something that even telescopes like James Webb struggle with a little bit just because they are kind of rare. You do need to look at like larger patches of the sky to be able to identify them. And there's a team of astronomers who have been working with Euclid to look at quasars in the early universe. And they recently released a list or catalog of 31 never before seen quasars. Many of these quasars, a couple of them are actually the most distant quasars that have ever been discovered. They are found when the universe was only around 770 million years old. So this is still a very, very young universe, around 5% of the current age of the universe. And they're also finding quasars in the early universe a little bit later on than 770 million years. But they are now looking at some of the fainter quasars to exist in the early universe, which is not really something that they could do before with previous generations of telescopes. So Euclid is now for the first time providing a census of what quasars in the early universe look like. And this is a really valuable thing to be doing because it can actually help astronomers understand how black holes in the early universe grew and influenced their environments, which can help us understand a whole bunch of things from early black hole growth to early galaxy evolution, and really how these supermassive black holes were able to grow and get so massive so fast. So this is a really, really interesting new set of quasars out of Euclid. And like I said before, it is not done surveying the third of the sky that it's planning to. So these 31 quasars that were identified from this team are kind of just the first to come. There will definitely be more interesting quasars to come out of the Euclid surveys.
Yeah, Euclid is really, really interesting. I do have to do full disclosure. I am actually a member of Euclid, so I am a little bit biased towards the spacecraft. But it is, as you say, it has a lot in common with James Webb Space Telescope in the sense that it's doing something that we couldn't do before. And these kind of, these telescopes that are the big firsts, or they help you find something that you couldn't see before. And this is one of the cool things in astronomy. There's a lot of, questions and, sort of puzzles that we want to unravel that are limited by our ability to see in certain ways or detect certain objects. Exoplanets are probably one of the most famous examples because it's like, where are all the exoplanets? Well, we just couldn't see them.
Yeah.
We didn't have the capacity to see them. Now we kind of do in some ways, and they're there. We're finding them, and so some of these early questions about quasars and the early universe, well, we need to be able to see them first of all.
Yeah.
So Euclid going in and looking at this, addresses some of the most sort of large scale questions about the early history of the universe, the really cool stuff. What about the history of the expansion of the universe? How did cosmic structures get formed? The not just galaxies, but groups of galaxies, the soap bubble structure that we see at really large scales. What can we do with what kind of extra things can we do with gravitational lensing, and all this stuff. And so of course it's planned for 6 years at least. And everyone's already like extension. Like, we want to keep this going. But it is a really interesting mission, and it's one of those ones that, as a spacecraft, it's also really interesting in kind of how it was constructed and how it came to be. I think we probably don't have time to discuss the history of how James Webb came to be because that was a long, very
interesting one.
yeah, let's just say a very, very, very long journey. But Euclid was selected back in 2011. So not as long as James Webb, but one of the cool things about it is that it kind of almost didn't happen, or went pear-shaped, because it launched in 2023 and it started to orbit the Sun-Earth system at Lagrange 2. But when they got the first images back, they actually saw that there was a little problem where sunlight was infiltrating one of the imaging sensors.
Oh.
And and it was already out at L2, which is I think you pointed out, this is very far away.
Yeah, humans, it's I think like 3 or 4 times further away than the moon. So, and humans have never been out further than the moon. So
yeah, so there's no way we could
possible to get there.
No, and what they did to fix the issue is they actually adjusted the spacecraft's orientation by a few degrees so that the craft itself would block the sunlight from entering the identified gap. And it's like, that is so clever.
Yeah.
They were able to find out where the gap was that the light was coming in from and change the spacecraft's orientation just so that no light could shine in that way anymore.
Yeah.
And so I love these kinds of really cool solutions, because at L2, you can't fix it like you could Hubble.
No. Yeah.
Anyways,
Euclid is another really, really awesome mission. Like, some of these space agencies have really been killing it lately with the space telescopes, because there's another one coming. The Roman space telescope is also
yes.
So it's a very, very good time to be into space telescopes.
Yeah, there's some really, really good ones coming. Unfortunately, I think I have to talk about a bad one.
Oh no.
So, enough of good telescopes. Let's talk about bad not telescopes. So probably people have heard about the news, but in case you hadn't, there's a company called Reflect Orbital that hopes to launch 50,000 satellites around Earth that literally are giant mirrors. And like, I'm not joking. That's actually what they're planning. It's giant mirrors in space, and they're not going to be at L2. They're going to be around Earth, and they're going to basically be there specifically to reflect sunlight back down to Earth. So this is a company that just got clearance from the US, I believe, FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, to launch its first demonstration satellite. this was going to have a reflective surface that measures about 60 feet or 18 meters on a side. And so unlike other crafts, so we've all heard about getting Starlinked, where one of those Starlink satellites flies across your image and makes a nasty trail. The Starlink satellites are actually not trying to create extra light. Some of them even have anti-reflective coatings, and they're still a pest to astronomers everywhere. These satellites are actually going to be trying to be bright. So actively messing up the night sky for astronomers everywhere. Many, many people have objected to this. A lot of them astronomers. And it is a very unfortunate piece of news, because the stated aim of this company is that they're planning to provide light during the night, which is exactly what astronomers do not want. It's also very, very, very bad for animals, for plants, for natural circadian rhythm. And in total, their stated goal is more than 1.7 million satellites obscuring the sky, blotting out the view of ground-based telescopes, messing up animals' night patterns, and overall causing a giant amount of a problem. So they're just got permission to launch the demonstration satellite. And 50,000 or more, or more is doing a lot of work, but 50,000 is still a tremendous amount of satellites in low Earth orbit. So this is not high Earth orbit, this is low Earth orbit. And the idea is literally that they're high up enough that they can catch the sun's light and reflect it back down onto the surface of Earth. So if you've ever tried to shine your flashlight a really long distance, you know that you have to be able to focus the light correctly if you want it to go anywhere. So most like flashlight beams and things like that, they disperse a lot. So if you had one of these mirrors, it could be really bright and annoying, but it probably wouldn't actually provide a lot of light on the ground, which is why they're saying they want 50,000 of them. Yeah, this is a real problem for a lot of people.
What imaginary problem are they trying to solve with this? Because that's what I understand.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would probably pay them not to do it. So
I mean, I understand, I'm not a fan of light pollution, but I understand some areas like downtown Toronto, there are so many people out at all hours, you need a certain amount of light. But what issue are they, what parts of the planet are they trying to illuminate, and why?
Yeah, well, there are some cases that they're saying that they'll be able to sell this light to places like solar farms.
Cheaper solution not be really good batteries.
Yeah.
During the day.
Well, and solar energy collection has already become so efficient that, in places like Australia, they're literally so efficient that they've fed so much energy back into the grid that even people without solar get hours of free electricity. So it's kind of, I'm not sure I know any people with solar panels that would buy this. It's a little bit odd because you have to imagine somebody wanting to buy sunlight for their region, which maybe if you're at the South Pole during the long winter, you might want to do that, but you also probably wouldn't, because the winter over at the South Pole is those months of darkness is needed by all the telescopes at the South Pole. So, obviously the stress and impact on wildlife is tremendous, and this is something that all of our astronomers and residents cover when they're out at Killarney Provincial Park. The amount of damage that we do to plants and animals and insects with light pollution is really, really hard to overstate.
Yeah.
And they're claiming that the light is going to be extremely well collimated, which means that they will be able to actually provide a contained high intensity light, but that they are, and I quote, definitely not going to start any fires.
I don't believe that.
So it seems like this startup company has gotten money somehow to do this, and I don't know how, but this is very like James Bond supervillain.
Yeah, this just seems like also like adding 50,000 massive satellites to Leo just sounds like a recipe for disaster just because of how much space junk there is already.
Yeah, well, we're already seeing more collisions even with just the Starlink satellites,
Yeah.
and all of these satellites burning up in Earth's atmosphere. We're already seeing an increase in heavy metal pollution in our atmosphere from satellites burning up just from SpaceX. We're already seeing, the chunks of Starlink satellite that came down in Saskatchewan. We're already seeing that poor person's house that had a piece of satellite fly through it, like all 3 floors. So space junk is already a huge problem, and more stuff in orbit, more collisions. You're gonna get Kessler system syndrome at some point, right?
Yeah.
So it really is kind of like, how did they get money for this? Launching stuff is expensive.
Yeah,
Like, who would invest in this? This is a terrible idea.
it just, I mean, even for their use cases of like providing for like solar power, it just this seems like a very convoluted and expensive way to do it. Like I
Yeah.
get what they're saying about like, needing certain areas might rely on solar power and being able to charge up batteries at night might be useful, but it's like, do you not just get better batteries? Like, is that not cheaper than launching something into space?
Well, and most
I don't know.
places that have that dependency do things like solar plus wind plus
Yeah.
hydro and have more than one system. So, yeah, it's bad news,
Very
unfortunately.
odd.
Um, so that's the story. It is they've gotten approved for one, but we do have some hope, because I will say that in the past, previous reflective satellites have not done very well. They have tended to crash and burn. So I believe Russia had one back in, I forget what year it was, but it did not last long.
Well, I very rarely do this, but I'm going to cheer for it to crash and die because
Yeah.
I don't really want this. There's so many parts of the world that are already like polluted enough, and um, like the light pollution even from neighboring cities really creeps into places
Oh
even
yeah.
further away. Like because it's just I think it's just like the atmosphere, right? Like you can
Mm-hmm.
sort of glow from nearby cities even if you're not in the city itself. So like this just really seems like I don't really believe that they're going to be able to make the collimate the light enough, that
Yeah.
it won't start a fire and will provide enough um like input and light to be able to like use solar power in the middle of the night. So I mean let's just hope that this just doesn't go well for several reasons.
Yeah, and unfortunately, speaking of bad news, your item is also bad news, but it's less bad
Yeah,
news.
it's a little bit of a surprising news item that also makes a little bit of sense at the same time. But Artemis 2 astronaut Jeremy Hansen, who was from the Canadian Space Agency, is stepping down from active astronaut duty. And I'm not entirely sure what this is going to mean going forward, because Jeremy Hansen has stated that he's not, sort of fully departing. He will still be involved in the Canadian Space Agency and Canada's role in space exploration, especially with the Artemis missions. But he's basically transitioning from his full-time duties as a Canadian Space Agency astronaut to what he's called a reservist role with the Canadian Space Agency. And just to give a bit of background on Jeremy Hansen, because he has had quite a remarkable career. He has had 32 years of military service in Canada and spent 17 years as an astronaut in the Canadian Space Agency. He has been a pilot and flying since a very young age. He started flying at 12 years old and then eventually began his career in aviation by joining the Royal Canadian Air Force as a CF-18 fighter pilot. He was then eventually recruited to the Canadian Space Agency Astronaut Corps in 2009 and waited a grand total of 14 years before he was assigned to the Artemis II mission in 2023. And that must have been a fantastic assignment to get, especially being his first assignment, making him among the first people to go to the moon in over 50 years and the first person from anywhere that's not the United States to ever go to the moon. So this is definitely it was kind of a disappointing thing to read that Jeremy Hansen was stepping down. But he will hopefully still be involved in not only, helping to shape Canada's role in its future in space exploration, but also being involved in a lot of outreach, as all of the Artemis astronauts have been involved in since their return from the moon. But yeah, again, he says it is far from a departure from the Canadian Space Agency, so he will still be around. And I guess it'll be pretty exciting to see what the next few years bring with his involvement with Artemis and the Canadian Space Agency.
Maybe we can get him to come to Astro Fair.
Maybe.
It's like, hey, we heard you're retired.
Yeah. Yeah. Got all this free time now. But he is actually only stepping down officially in September. So I think Astro Fair is yeah,
we're too close. We're too close.
Yeah. So Astro Fair next year.
Yeah. You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
Well, I thought in the last couple of minutes, I might just end on a little bit of good news for something different. And obviously hoping to hear more from Jeremy Hansen in his new roles. But a little bit of fun astro news that I spotted. That's just a little bit of, I suppose, a happy news story to end with. It's sugar in space. So there's, been all kinds of interesting things that we have, quote unquote, seen in outer space by looking at its light. And especially with spectra and being able to look for distinct signatures of things like hydrogen and helium. We've seen nebulas that had beer in them. And so you probably all heard about the beer nebula. There was one that had, I think they definitely had one with coffee somewhere. It's really cool because you can see these molecules in space and actually identify them as, things that are more complex and potentially building blocks to extra things. And sugars are kind of one of those really key, different, awesome biomolecules. Sugars exist in lots of living organisms. And so if you can have sugars just hanging out in a nebula, well, maybe that part of life is actually not so hard to form. And of course, they form kind of the backbone of DNA and RNA as we know it, the things that kind of make life possible here on Earth, and I should say life as we know it. So sugars are needed for all kinds of stuff. So one of the things people always wondered about was, how did sugars form on Earth? So if we do lab experiments about how early Earth looked like, we don't really get a lot of sugars forming in early Earth conditions. But if sugars like ribose and glucose can exist in meteorites, which they do, and in asteroid samples, which they do, and can be found in nebula, which actually they've just found, they think, then maybe sugars didn't have to be made on Earth. They could be made anywhere out there and just have been part of the gas cloud that, formed our planet. And star and all the other planets. So obviously this is a detection that they think they've found. Follow-up observing is always a good idea, but it's really cool and a fun one to kind of, I think, maybe end the show on, is about that life in space, looking for some of those key markers, and of course being able to look with even better and more interesting telescopes now mean that we can try to find more interesting clues, and maybe something nice and sweet out there. It's like, oh, you've got your coffee nebula, you've got your sugar. We could build a whole thing out there.
Yeah, coffee sounds like a good idea, but coffee in space would be great.
Yeah, well, we're astronomers. We could appreciate a good, I don't know, what is it, mocha latte? Can we get some chocolate? I just need some chocolate and sugar and coffee.
I think they even have like actual, like I think it was the European Space Agency designed like a coffee cup that you could drink out of normally in space. So you can have, like, your own cup of coffee in space instead of drinking coffee the way that astronauts normally do.
Well, they do have an espresso machine on the ISS now, so there's really no reason not to go.
Yeah, the ISS, it's ticking all of my boxes now. So.
All right, well, we probably better end off the show here. Thanks everyone for listening. You have been listening to York University Astronomy and Astrophysics program, written and presented by students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. The hosts this evening have been Sunna Withers, live from the Allan Carswell Observatory, and myself, Dr. Elena Hyde. You can always connect with us on all of our social media channels, but for all our info, show notes, content updates, free tours, free tickets, everything, all on our website, yorku.ca/science/observatory. Thanks again for joining us this evening, everyone. Clear skies and have a good night.
Have a good night.